Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch was founded December 12, 1878 by Joseph Pulitzer. His newspaper became a champion of the common man, featuring exposés and a hard-hitting populist approach. The Post's first edition sold just over 4,000 copies. The Post's influence in the community grew over the decades until the latter half of the 20th century. With advertising revenues falling, on January 31, 2005, Pulitzer announced the sale of the Post-Dispatch to Lee Enterprises of Davenport, Iowa, for $1,460 million. Our guest today, Christopher Ave, is the political and national editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and its online presence, stltoday.com. He coordinates national content for both the printed editions and the online platform. Mr. Ave and his team use blogs, Twitter, and long-form investigative stories to inform their readers. Christopher Ave has been a full-time professional journalist for nearly 30 years. He's worked as a reporter or editor in New Jersey, Illinois, Texas, Florida, and Missouri. Mr. Ave has been with the Post since early 2008. He's also an avid musician and songwriter who owns and operates a small recording studio. Christopher Ave, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I want to just say to the audience, and I'll say it directly to you, today is August the 26th. 2.5 weeks ago was the time when Michael Brown was shot, and there has been considerable activity in the Post newsroom since that date. And while originally we were just going to have like a discussion about how the news operates, I think we're going to spend some time here talking about what goes on in the newsroom during a crisis period like that. So, you heard what I said. Saturday, the 9th of August, things changed. You were running along quite easily, and then all of a sudden this story broke. What happened? How does the Post react?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like a lot of news organizations, we do have staffing on the weekends. You know, the news doesn't stop, so we have to continue to provide coverage. However, typically on the weekends, our staffing is much reduced. You know, we have a couple of reporters during the day, a couple at night, handful of editors, and then that's much less than what we have typically during the week. When a big news event happens, obviously we sort of know, you know, it's every person up. And so immediately people began coming in to help cover. Now, I myself wasn't there. I happened to be out of the state that weekend. I feel bad because I missed some of this work that was very important work and work that needed to be done. But the Post newsroom immediately mobilized, and we had people who literally stayed on the scene night after night, all night long. After 9/11, our newsroom, in a sort of precautionary move, purchased some tear gas masks and some other equipment to cover a tragedy should a tragedy occur. And unfortunately, in this case, we needed to break out that equipment. And so we equipped some of our people that were there on the scene once the riots began, the demonstrations. Some of them turned violent. Some of our people needed to wear the gas masks. Some of our people needed to wear I don't know if it's correctly called body armor, but some of the protective material to go out there and actually cover the story. And a couple of our people actually got injured during their quest to bring the news to our readers. And so it was quite, and continues to be quite a big story, not only covering literally the moment-by-moment actions on the street, but also covering all the vast implications that this event has touched on.
Now, the next night, the Sunday night, that's when the real rioting began in Ferguson. And your Post photographer, David Carson, I believe is his name.
Mm-hmm. One of our photographers,
he was
yes.
one of the ones who went into the Quick Trip, as it was the now famous Quick Trip. Mm-hmm. That before it was torched, he was actually in there while people were looting the place. I heard him say on the air that he was taking photographs, and then all of a sudden some big guy looked up at him, had a gun in his waistband, and he said, "Hi, I'm just here from the Post taking photos," and the guy just went back to looting and let him alone.
That did happen. David, actually, there was a piece, and it's still on stltoday.com if anyone wants to look at it, but there's a piece written by a reporter, David Hunt, who interviewed David Carson about his experiences. And in that piece, he describes, he's doing his job, he's taking photographs, people are looting the store. One of them notices him, notices the camera, and says, "What are you doing?" And Carson, I think very cleverly said, "I'm for the newspaper." And the guy said something menacing, and Carson said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be okay. Your face is covered." He had a handkerchief or something over his face, and that worked. The guy let him alone. But later that night, according to his account, Carson was hit. He got knocked down on the ground and was kicked or hit. I don't remember exactly which during this. So he didn't fully escape. He was fine, but it's pretty scary when you think about. When you think about journalists under attack, and of course we had a recent tragedy of a journalist being beheaded by ISIS that made the rounds. You think of other countries, you think of other cultures. You don't think of journalists being attacked here in the United States, here in Missouri. But that happened. That actually happened, and I think what it shows is the dedication that some of our folks and other folks in other journalism organizations really have to this mission of telling the truth, of spreading the actual news, and that's what we do, and we take it seriously.
At what point, in your opinion, does the presence of the press become a catalyst instead of a reporting function?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's really hard to tell. Our position is to tell the news, not be the news. We hate it being in any way a part of a news story. That's not us, and when I say us, I'm talking about those who gather news according to traditional journalism ethics and present it in an unbiased and fair way. That's what we do. We are not on the talk radio, spouting opinions. We certainly have an opinion department that's completely separate from the news gathering operation on a different floor, under different management. We don't talk to them, they don't talk to us. The only times that we actually see them really is when they invite a public figure to come in and answer questions. The editorial people, that is the decision, the opinion people, they invite us to come in and attend, and we can ask questions too. So we see them there. But I want to be very clear that there is a distinction at our news organization, at least. There's a great distinction between opinion and news, and I have nothing to do with the opinion, and the opinion people have nothing to do with our news gathering organization. All right, we got that straight. So,
right.
So in my opinion, when you have an event like this, part of this event, inherent in this event, is the demonstration. And let's be clear, the ability to organize, to petition, to demonstrate is a sacred right in the Constitution. It's protected, and that right is important. And part of law enforcement's job is to protect that right, not impinge on that right. Another right that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights includes, is a right for the press, the media now, to cover these events unimpeded, So what we have is kind of a clash of this, because we have protesters who know that they're being covered, right? And when the cameras light up, it seems like the protesters sometimes light up and do their thing. And that can be frustrating to journalists, because we're not there to create the news, we're there to report the news. And so it's a very interesting point, and I think when then we start having, Hollywood celebrities, and we have rap stars, and we have people coming down there, and they're getting interviewed, on the camera, and then all of a sudden, some people are acting disrespectfully. And I read accounts of where maybe some of the camera people for one of the network out-of-town, fly in and fly out crews were cracking jokes right around the spot where Michael Brown was killed. I mean, these things sort of rub me the wrong way. In my view, what a journalist's job is to get in there and tell the story and not be the story. And that's what we try to do.
Well, you make an interesting point just a moment ago about people have an inherent right to protest and to petition their government with their grievances.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that's in the Bill of Rights. But then you have people who cross that line, and suddenly they became violent over a long period of time. Can the press understand that when, for example, if all of a sudden a huge crowd showed up in front of the Post-Dispatch's building, and they were protesting something that you had maybe had on your front page or in the editorial section, right?
Sure.
And it's like, okay, they have a right to be there. Then all of a sudden they start smashing out your windows, or they start beating up some of your reporters or some of the workers coming in and out of the building. now all of a sudden you become wary of the people who are out there protesting because you never know whether or not some or all of them will turn to violence.
That's exactly right, and that's what makes this so hard. In our society, in our government, no right is unlimited. The right to free speech, which I heartily endorse and live out every day, is not unlimited. And the classic example, of course, is you can't run into a movie theater and scream fire. That's not legal. That's not protected under the Constitution. So every right is limited, including the right to express your views and protest and petition. It's not an unlimited right. So you don't have the right to go in and tear down a building, destroy property, or injure someone because you feel that it's part of your right to grieve, to petition and to organize and to express a viewpoint. Now, in my view, what we had in Ferguson for a number of nights were a vast number of people who wanted to protest. Were some of them angry? Yes, of course they were. They wanted to express their point of view, that in their view injustice had been done and that they demanded some kind of redress, some kind of reaction to fix the injustice. And then you had a few people who were in there who just took advantage of that to go in and steal stuff and break down some walls and start some fires and lob some stuff at cops. And you know, we sitting here today, we can't tell if those people were completely separate from the protesters or if there was some who did both. I don't know. And it's important to say, neither do you, neither does anybody, unless you actually were there and actually talked to one of those people and that person was actually honest, you know. But what I can say is that lawlessness, destruction of property, violence towards people, not protected, not okay. And in fact, if you'll note, some of the community leaders and African American leaders immediately and consistently denounced that sort of violence. I mean, I remember, I think it was
the clergy. The clergy was out there trying to keep people separated.
Volunteers were out there. Some members of different faiths were out there, linking arms, literally trying to get between the protesters and the police. So there were, and I always look for those kinds of people, the kind of people that are trying to actually find a solution, kind of people that are actually trying to, you know, move ahead. And in this story, there are lots of those people. I mean, so we don't know exactly who it was who committed the violence. A number of people have been arrested and charged with this sort of thing, and the justice system will play out. But my point is, it was a very difficult situation for journalists, and we at the Post did the best that we knew how in covering a big story without becoming the center of the big story.
But the story seems to have changed. It
changes every day. Yeah, it's
but
evolving.
I mean, what I'm getting at is what it's changed from is the death of an 18-year-old young man, boy, I don't know what you want to call him. I guess 18's a man. He's been shot and he's dead. And there was a police officer who shot him, and we don't know the actual circumstances.
No, we don't. It's important to remember.
But this story has suddenly changed from that to much larger grievances about how the black community feels that it is being manipulated, it is being maligned, they're not being given a chance, that the police generally treat them differently than other people that they might encounter. What do you make of that change?
Well, all those complaints have certainly been made, and I think in Ferguson, we've written about and we've certainly read from others a lot of stories that sort of focus on, you know, Ferguson has an interesting set of circumstances. Here's a city that was majority white, and then in the course of just a few years, it became majority black. The demographics shifted quickly. However, the institutions, the governing institutions, the city council, the police department, failed to make that change. And so what you have now is a majority black city. I mean, 2/3 of the city are African American, right? You have a police department that's almost all white. You have a city council that only has one African American member. So you have this dissonance. You know, you have leadership and law enforcement that doesn't reflect the community. All right, that in and of itself, I don't think fully explains what happened in Ferguson in the wake of Michael Brown's death. but it's certainly a factor. Here's another factor, and I know this is one that you would like to talk about, Lee, because you have some feelings about this. St. Louis County has one of these incredibly decentralized, balkanized forms of government. In the one county, there are something like 92 municipalities, different municipalities, many of which have their own police department, their own municipal court system, their own standards of law enforcement, their own ability to pay law enforcement officers, thereby attracting varying qualities of applicants for their law enforcement officers, the ability to pay municipal court employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these municipalities, and it just so happens that several of them are in North County in the Ferguson area, rely on fines and fees brought in by the municipal court system for a big chunk of their revenue. So you have the racial disparities. You have these very a complex cluster of municipalities, court systems, law departments, law enforcement departments, police departments. And then you top all that off with several years of a bad economy where the jobs were not there and where people who have been underserved by the public school system or people who have chosen not to avail themselves of the benefits of the public school system, either way, they are left behind in this economy. So these are a lot of the factors that can, if not explain Ferguson, can illuminate any discussion of Ferguson that I believe are worth much more attention. And so why did the story change? The story changed because it's not just an incident. The story is no longer just what happened that night between the police officer and between Michael Brown. The story is what happened that night, then what happened afterwards, and then this rioting that you mentioned and this collection of protests plus lawlessness. And then you have some bad apples in the police departments that were there. We've heard several shocking and dispiriting accounts of officers who uttered views that probably do not and in any way reflect the departments that they are employed by. A couple of officers have been suspended. You also have seen lots of incredibly good acts by officers. You've seen, I believe, I remember reading in our newspaper, some members of the highway patrol that were called in saw that there was a basketball goal that was broken, and they went out, collected a little money of their own money, and fixed the basketball goal, and then started playing ball with some of the kids that were there. You know, it's not just the bad things that we need to pay attention to; it's the good things. And in fact, it is through the actions of good people in Ferguson, around Ferguson, not involved in government, whatever. That is where the hope is, and that's where some of these solutions actually are going to emerge from, in my view.
Two things. One, when I was getting a haircut, preparing for this show.
It looks great, by the way.
Thank you. And I was sitting in the chair and talking. Of course, Ferguson had come up, and the person who was cutting my hair said, "Oh well, the woman," and I won't mention her name. We'll just call her D. The woman who was standing right there cutting hair, she's from Ferguson and lives right in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And so I just started asking her a few questions. And among the questions that I asked was, do you think that if the police had been black, that this would have been any different? And she said, I don't see any difference. I mean, a policeman's a policeman.
Okay.
And he's supposed to enforce the law. What she really found offensive was how she had to prove who she was before she was allowed to go home. And she was sick to death of having the press all over stirring things up as far as she was concerned. Second point that I want to make is this, that there are some who are, and I'm going to say some in the white community who I've heard from, who say that the Post-Dispatch's attitude is one of, it's your fault. You white people, that's the message that they're hearing. Whether you're transmitting this message or not, this is the message that they're receiving, and they are getting very aggravated. Some of these people I've heard from are very aggravated that somehow it's being translated that it's the white community, when in fact many of those people see personal responsibility. There was this act between the young man and the officer, and then there's everything else. And the everything else, that's personal responsibility. perhaps they don't understand fully how aggravated the people who live in Ferguson are about the way that their perceived treatment is. But now we come to the part that I don't normally do, because this is not about slapping my guests around. I don't like to do that. But we have this paper right here. If you take a shot of this, there we go. No, from camera one over there, which you had on the front page of the Sunday paper, which shows you have, let's see, the percentage of black in Berkeley, and then the percentage of police.
Who are black?
Pardon?
Percentage of African American
Officers.
population of the town, and then the percentage of
Right.
African American police
Right.
officers. That's what that shows.
Exactly. And there's considerable about, black, white in the paper. And then I go down here and I look and I said, Doug Moore, one of the three writers of the main story, white man, under 40. Walker Moskamp, white man, under 40. Nancy Cambria, white woman. Then you go over here on this story about Nixon, Governor Nixon and his political future. Kevin McDermott, white man in his 50s. Virginia Young, white woman. And I'm going like, okay, the Post seems to be lecturing the community on black-white relations, and you've got 5 white people writing about it.
I think it's a fair observation, although I would offer just a few thoughts. What you didn't say is that the editor-in-chief of this entire paper is a Latino male. What you didn't say is that the editor who's in charge of all production and in fact has run the newsroom at night, who picks our front page stories every day that he works, is African American. What you didn't say is that we have photographers who are African American. What you didn't, on and on and on. Yes, you can pick out one story and say, well, these are 3 white people. You got their ages wrong, by the way, but regardless.
Are they older than that?
Doug Moore is older than 40, but regardless, your point is that we have 3 white people who wrote a story that have to do with white-black relations, and that's true. That's an observation, and
it's just a matter
of
perception of how some in the public feel lectured to by the Post.
But this is a news story. This is not a lecturing. This is a story that says, okay, if in Ferguson the police department has 53 members and 50 of them, excuse me, that's the opinion page, Lee.
Exactly.
We'll get to the opinion page for a moment. As I explained earlier, the opinion page has nothing to do with the news coverage. They don't tell us what to do. They don't suggest. They don't give us tips. We don't give them tips. We don't tell them what to do. So let's be clear. The opinion page that I know you're dying to talk about has nothing to do with the side that I'm on. If you want to invite Tony Messenger to come and talk about the opinion page.
He's been here.
There you go. So, limiting our conversation to what I know about, which is the news report, is that this is a legitimate news story. When you find that 53 officers patrol Ferguson and 50 of them are white, and Ferguson is 67% black, that then suggests, oh wow, that's out of bounds. That's out of whack, I should say, not out of bounds. That's out of whack. It's not reflective of the community. I wonder what the other communities' percentages are. And that was the genesis of this story. The fact that 3 Caucasian reporters wrote it is an undisputable fact. The fact that the editor that signed off on this is Latino, and that the editor who picked this story to be the lead story is African American, was perhaps not so evident.
Okay. Point made.
All right, thank you.
Now, we got about 5 minutes left.
Wow, that's all.
That's it.
This conversation has flown by.
It has.
It shows your skill as an interviewer.
Thanks. So, you're a musician. Let's talk about you a little bit. No, seriously, how did you, and the reason I bring that up is because the fella over there, my floor director, that was the first thing that he mentioned about you, because I sent out a little bit of information as to who's going to be here. And he
my kind of guy.
And so he's into music too.
Good.
So I thought we'd spend about the last few minutes talking about you and how'd you come to music, and how does music and reporting and...
That's a very good question. Apropos of nothing, I guess. As a kid, one Christmas I decided I wanted a guitar. I knew nothing about music. I didn't the faintest idea how to play guitar. But I asked my mom, "Can I have a guitar for Christmas?" And she got me a guitar for Christmas. And I started to play it. And I was horrible. I banged on that thing and made the most god-awful sounds and drove my family crazy, and I would be banging on it in front of the TV and banging on it in my bedroom. Somehow, stumbling through it for years, I learned to actually play the thing, and I always have. It's always been a part of who I am and what I do. And some years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I sort of started my own little studio. I have a small studio. It's in my house. But I've written a number of songs that have been used as jingles or as advertising, radio,
he says you're good.
Online stuff.
He says you're good. I'm no judge of music.
No accounting for taste.
But he knows more about it.
No accounting for taste. But yeah, I got to write a song that was sort of the theme song. And here's where journalism intersected with this. I got to write a song that served as the theme song for this thing called PolitiFact. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there is a website called PolitiFact that takes politicians' claims and now commentators' claims and then truth tests them, does the research and figure out if these claims are true or not. It's one of the fact-checking, in fact, it was one of the early fact-checking websites. It started about 7 years ago. And they wanted to start with a bang, and they wanted a theme song, and so I wrote the theme song. We did a video. It got 1 million hits or something. It was fun, So that's the kind of thing where I think in journalism, journalism is a science, but there's also an art to it. There's an art to writing a story and telling a story the way that you do on this show and the way that our writers do in the paper. You have to give some thought to how you present it, and there is an art to it. It's beyond just a mathematical equation, right? And music is the same way. There's certainly a lot of affinity between math and music, but there's also an artistry to it, and I enjoy that. I enjoy expressing myself through music.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's. I know too many people. They're one thing. I mean, you seem to be two things. And
well, I'm a father and a husband, and I go to church. I'm a few other things too, but that is certainly a passion of mine, is music, and certainly journalism is as well.
And a good father too. Is I have to tell people a little story. We were supposed to get together for breakfast. This is long before. I mean, this is back in June.
Yeah. That's right.
And I was going to meet you, and so I'm sitting there waiting, and then finally I get a call from you. Oh, my kid's bicycle chain is broke, and I have to fix it before I can come meet with you. And I thought, and you apologized when you got there. And I said, hey, kids come first.
Yeah. Well,
they really do. So
they do. That's true. And
it's really
sorry
good.
Again.
Well, I want to. We got about a minute left here, which means that we're really out. Is there any one comment you want to make about the Post or any of your work?
I've been at the Post for 7 years, and I'm proud to be at the Post. I always have been. But I've honestly never been prouder of the Post than I am right now in covering this Ferguson story. It's a large, explosive, multifaceted, complex story, and we are giving it our all. And I'm seeing reporters, as I say, putting on the gas mask, working all night, putting it together. It's great to be a part of it.
Great. Thanks for that comment, and thanks for being here.
Thank
I've
you.
been speaking with Christopher Ave. He's the national and political editor for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Been in the business a long, long time, and he's been really busy the last couple of weeks. So, and don't take it the wrong way that I'm here trying to bang on the Post-Dispatch. I'm just doing my job and pointing some things out. I'm Lee Presser. Oh yes, this is going to be uploaded to YouTube, so you can see it there. Thank you. Goodbye.